Hi, everyone. Good to see you at today's Insights Tech Showcase. I hope you enjoyed our first tech demo, and I'm super excited to be here with Trevor from i-Genie today for our next demo on deck. Before I hand it on over to him, I just want to remind you about that Q&A box. If you have any questions, you can drop them there, and we'll get to them at the end. And I'll also be dropping Trevor's LinkedIn in that chat box, so feel free to drop your own LinkedIn as well, so we can all connect. But with that, Trevor, I will hand it on over to you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. My name is Trevor Sumner. I'm the CEO here at i-Genie.ai. I think this is a really exciting topic. What is the role of AI and insights, and how is it changing the way we work, how we think, how we collaborate across the organization? It's also pretty scary, right? We know there are a lot of organizational challenges associated with adopting these type of tools and having the confidence that we've had in other previous legacy data sources. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about something I'm particularly excited about, which is our Presto platform, which is our Agentic AI layer on top of i-Genie. So hopefully you can see my screen, and Bridget will tell me if somehow that's not the case. But we're going to talk about Presto, which is providing reliable agentic insights using large-scale digital consumer data. And that decision-grade agentic insights is pretty critical to us. So first, a little bit about us, i-Genie. We are reinventing consumer insights with modern AI and data. We are working with some of the most modern and most demanding multinational clients. You can see Kenvue, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Danone, Clorox, et cetera. We have a robust platform of different products, which we'll talk about. 80 full-time employees, over 40 of them are data scientists and engineers, right? So, it's a really deep investment to get these type of products right. And most i-Genie employees have served on the client side, so we really actually get the challenges that you have. And our most famous employee, of course, is our founder, Stan Stanu-Nathan, who was the executive chairman here at i-Genie, but also headed up consumer insights at Unilever and Coca-Cola. He actually wrote the book on using AI for marketing and product innovation, and his work at Unilever was the basis of a Harvard Business Review about rebuilding an insights engine. And it was at Unilever that he was spending $350 million a year on surveys, focus groups, and panels. And he was getting interesting data back that, Hellmann's mayonnaise is doing great in India, but the only one challenge is they don't sell Hellmann's mayonnaise in India. And so it was at Unilever he started building, kind of a thesis that customers don't want to talk to you via surveys, panels, and focus groups. It's kind of like, observing people at the zoo, right? Or observing animals at the zoo. They're happy to talk about you in the wild. And so that's what we do at i-Genie. They do that, looking at billions of searches, social posts, and reviews. And we do it a little differently than some people, from the search perspective. We look at Google and LLM search, but we use, instead of Google Trends, look at millions of search keywords, billions of search queries. For social, you have all the kind of usual suspects, but we also transcribe the audio, video, so that we can understand the context. We look at ratings and reviews for every single SKU in the category, every new product launch, and we throw that into our engine where we start applying AI. And AI understands and builds a list of every ingredient, every claim, every benefit, every format, every trend. And so when you're leaving that review on a Neutrogena product, that's actually a signal not just for Neutrogena, but the specific, anti-aging moisturizing SKU, as well as anti-aging as a benefit, as well as moisturizer as a format, and every ingredient, whether it's pistachio or tallow or anything else. And so we've got a variety of proprietary AI algorithms, category-specific sentiment models, natural language processing in over 20 different languages. So it's a lot of AI in there to get this right. And then we have, essentially 5 different products, looking at, the impact of your digital marketing on digital engagement, Brand Pulse, CX Bench, looking at, kind of customer experience, Trend Spotter, predicting out trends, and Innovate, which actually, creates new product innovation ideas and, shortens innovation cycles from 12 to 18 months to 2 to 3 months and doubles product success rates. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we leverage this AI and expose it via Agentic today. But one of the key things about AI models is that they have to be more useful than the data that we've had in the past. And so, for example, our Brand Pulse is predictive of market share with time to act. High correlation, you can understand, who are the outliers on our Brand Pulse scores, which is basically brand equity tracking that can tell what people think about price and superiority, loyalty, trust, as well as unlimited product attributes, unlimited competitors, a lot of advantages on top of traditional brand equity tracking. But one of the advantages is really understanding the correlations to market share. And you can even look at outliers like Native. Why are they actually outperforming their brand equity? Or Kerastase, which is underperforming. They're sold through salons. So there's some explanations, but it also is prescriptive about what you should do. And so this is kind of an example of what our brand pulse looks like for an example like Olay, where we can see their buzz, which is basically mental availability across search, social, and reviews. We can see, again, those product superiority, advocacy, price value, which we'll talk about, and kind of how things are trending overall. And so we can kind of look at the whole market, every single brand, because again, AI is not limited by surveys, right? We have all the data. We can look at, every single brand and who, for example, is leading in terms of, if I'm Olay competing on product superiority, who's making the biggest moves year over year, sort through that. And again, you can kind of look at this data in graphical format and see that, not surprisingly, like many of our industries, that the disruptor brands are the ones that are most increasing in brand pulse scores and market share. And you can kind of really diagnose what that is, and where the incumbents at the bottom are not only losing market share, but also losing brand share. So that's kind of traditional dashboarding, has a lot of AI into it. But, as Stan says, dashboards, dash hopes. Nobody is like, hey, you know what I need? I need another dashboard, right? People are trying to get to answers and insights, and more importantly, to actions that impact the business faster than ever. And this is where Presto comes in. And so Presto is our agentic layer. We have a variety of different agents on the left side that are pre-canned. So again, this is really focused on this brand pulse product. We'll talk about a couple others. So I can look at okay, I'm Olay. How is Olay talked about on social, especially around product superiority? Let me go to that next deep dive, right? And so you can see luxury at a drugstore price. You can see very specific areas on social where it has different senses of, kind of what topics are trending. We have a variety of different, graphs that are PowerPoint ready that you can immediately cut and paste. And you can go all the way from those top level scores into verbatim level, examples of Olay for superiority. And so you can see where some of the data is coming from. So one of the key things is all the data is observable, right? So it's a walled garden of curated data, enhanced metadata that really makes sense of the world, so that you can actually trust the outputs. Now, you may not like the answer. It may not give you the answer exactly the way you want. You may have to regenerate your query, but fundamentally, it'll give accurate data. And so, being able to get to the next level is critical. So I'll give you a couple examples of how you can use Agentic AI to get to answers faster. We published a piece on, kind of right now we're 12 months after Liberation Day, and that's typically 12 to 18 months is how long it takes from a supply shock to get through into a pricing decision. So a lot of brands are looking at do I absorb the margin compression or do I raise prices? But you got to ask yourself some questions. Do you have a high perceived value for the price? What are the drivers of those perceived value? What messages should I reinforce if I do raise prices to get that feeling of premiumness and not lose market share? How do I compare to key competitors? And which of the SKUs have the most and least price elasticity? And then, of course, you want to measure perceived value after I raise prices, and you don't want to wait weeks or months for a survey. So, we have something called, kind of value, which is your sense of premiumness and value. And so this is an example of Billy, and you can see their price value equation has gone down from kind of 63, 64 down to 48, 47. You probably want to diagnose these things, because this shows you hey, you probably shouldn't raise prices because your customers already are struggling with that value equation. And we've got the ability, and we've got graphs that can look at overall the topics of positive and negative value. So, in this case, if this is positive, so if the topic is packaging or sugar-free or coconut, so these are the topics, or coffee, these identify certain themes, segments, or messages that you want to lean into if you raise prices to reinforce that value equation. And we can do this at the SKU level too with our CX Bench product. So you can see, what's your sentiment on price for a set of SKUs, the segments, and you can see even the SKUs themselves. But again, dashboards, dash hopes. Do you really want to go through all of that to get to that data? So again, this is where Presto comes in, where you can ask these questions immediately and directly and get answers in a matter of seconds or minutes. And part of the thing is just, knowing that you're going to always ask follow-on questions, and you're going to get new data and understand that, like, okay, now I need to ask a follow-on question. And those need to be in near real time. And this is where Presto really shines. And so here you can see, which of Neutrogena's segments have the highest and lowest sentiment around price, right? And you can see body is its highest, face is its lowest. And you can actually, again, go through that diagnosis. You can go through topics. You can go through specific SKU level information. And kind of really dig down and understand exactly what's going on when it comes to pricing. And so when you make a pricing decision, it really is also a part of brand equity decision, right? And so you may want to go from segments and say, oh, well, which SKUs among face or which SKUs among sun or body are the ones that have the highest sentiment around price. And again, you'll get answers in seconds. And so that's a lot easier than having to navigate through dashboards and cross-reference information across them. And so this is something that Presto is really, really good at. And here you can see the average sentiment on a SKU level and some of the strategic implications. Super, super powerful, right? And something on people's mind. So how are people using this? I'll give you an example. One of our hair care clients was looking at a sub-segment around heat protectorant, and they discovered negative sentiment around having to put heat protectorant only could be put in wet hair. So they said, okay, well, what if we launch a product that could be applied to dry hair? Well, the product was an immediate Amazon bestseller. Most customer review feedback of any product, 4.7 star average versus 4.2. It literally had no 1 or 2 star reviews in the first 60 days. So like that's an example of like really being able to, using Presto and other tools like these, to like connect into micro segments and identify what's going on very quickly because you've got a vast array of data. And so another example is a pharma giant we work with who saw a competitor winning market share, but didn't understand where that was coming from or how it was happening. And so they started asking like, well, what's going on with their brand pulse score and their buzz? And actually it was going down, and their search trend was going down. So like this looked like a temporary threat. Well, that's good. But then let's look at the data a little deeper, and you can see that the negative superiority of their products had actually jumped 150%. So not only was this not a lasting trend, but there was a weakness there. And they looked at the topical analysis and saw that they had reformulated their formula and, according to customers, had ruined the texture and flavor, which led to a follow-up question: what do people think about our texture and flavor? And they saw that was actually one of their strengths, and they were able to launch a marketing campaign to attack directly on texture and flavor and really shove a dagger in the heart of the competition. All of these follow-up questions, which would take weeks or months to get to the next answer, to get to the action, now happen in seconds or minutes. And that's the power, right? And so we often get compared from Presto versus general purpose LLMs. General purpose LLMs are general, they're hallucinatory, they're really poor at math. You should not look at it for anything kind of computational, whereas Presto is purpose-built, it's validated, it's quantitative, it's proprietary, and it's observable. We have access to data that's not on the web, whether that's product reviews, search data, product launch data, transcription of audio and video. So it's really focused on this specific problem. I mentioned this earlier, we speak the language of insights. We have category-specific natural language processing. So, if I say this Axe body spray is sick, that's a good thing. If I say Danone this yogurt made me sick, that's a bad thing. All of it's purpose-tuned, and it's tuned for different languages. We have tuned natural language processing in over 20 languages. You can't take Arabic, convert it to English, do your analysis, and convert it back. That doesn't work. Again, I mentioned it's quantitative. We have specific enhanced data and algorithms like our brand pulse score, which correlates with market share, net sentiment score that was defined. Do you really want a general purpose LLM deciding what that should be on its own? We could talk for days about how to optimize sentiment scores and why our sentiment accuracy is almost 20% greater than typical industry standards. Our trend future factor ranking predicts that trends 18 months in the future with just much better accuracy, right? Versus asking, Claude for what the trends are going to be in the future. You have no idea how they're calculating it, what the methodology is, et cetera. So all of these things are tuned specifically as part of our engine, and no single model for us is good enough. We use the right one for every job. We use AI, we use Gemini, we use, I don't know, I think at least 3 different versions of OpenAI. Part of it is like, how do you optimize for all the mass number of tokens that you have for different purposes? But we, use NLP, we use LLMs, we have our own deep learning models. And so the result is, kind of a final answer that's just a higher quality that no single model could produce. And so that, those models include deep learning models that are, predictive of the future. And that's really where this gets exciting, which is to tell you not just where you are or where you've been, but where the market is going. And that's really gold for our clients and our partners. And so for us, we think of AI as the competitive advantage that, you get with bigger, validated, enriched data sets and getting actionable insights at digital speed. And typically, this is a quarter of the cost of traditional legacy data surveys, panels, focus groups, and certainly, a lot faster. And the way we've priced this is because Stan comes from Unilever, and so he has he's very passionate about democratizing insights. So we have unlimited seats as part of our licensing. So whether it's brand tracking and marketing activation, new product launch, trend discovery, your R&D and innovation teams, having all a single source of data to work off of, M&A, is just absolutely critical and makes us a really great vendor to work with, great to kind of democratize those access and, democratize that access across all our different products. So that's why we're kind of spreading. We've kind of tripled in size year over year. Our clients, general are expanding 146% year over year. We're delivering consumer insights in over 25 countries, natural language processing in 20 languages. We're able to support global rollouts. And again, it's because Presto and our platform is so powerful in the way it incorporates AI. So that's us. We're i-Genie.ai. We are real-time decision-grade intelligence for consumer insights without surveys. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trevor. Just as a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions, pop them in that Q&A box. But we have just a few minutes left, so I'll start diving into some of our questions. The first one that we have here is, can i-Genie's brand pulse be used to understand brand perceptions among specific B2B audiences?
Great question. We've looked at B2B. It depends on the data sources, right? So we're working with an ingredient provider, one of the largest in the world, it's a $12 billion company. And they're providing ingredients to consumer products companies. So it's like B2B to C. And they're looking at those consumer ingredients and trends and thinking through that. If you're looking at like pure B2B, like we're i-Genie, we sell to other businesses. We can look at, reviews data sources because there's G2, there's Trustpilot, there's a variety of things out there. We can look at search data because that's there's a high integrity of intent there. The thing that may be, if the question is like volume based, is social data. And so we'd be happy to talk about it. Certain products lend themselves a little bit more to it, right? So Brand Pulse understands your price value equation, your product superiority. That requires, some corpus of data to look at to really get a sense of it. But like our Impact IQ is just, how is your meaningful share of engagement on social, on search, and even on reviews compared to your competitors? That's easy to do in a B2B context. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me. I'm Trevor at i-Genie.ai and be happy to talk through the use case and how we can help.
Wonderful. Thanks, Trevor. Just a few minutes ago, you talked about democratizing access. On that note, have you seen any resistance to democratizing access to AI-based tools that offer less needed training?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard, right? Like nobody's going to give this to the CEO on day one, and it's scary. We just did a webinar with Vijay Raj of Unilever and James Cummings of Kenvue, talking about whether you build or buy AI. And one of the best things they said was, we need to move as an insights industry from being the gatekeepers of insights to the enablers of insightfulness. And that's going to be a process, right? You've got to have trust in these things. And with the amount of hallucinations, like that's a struggle. And so that's a cultural thing. And we're here to help enable you, help provide, again, wall-gardened, observable data that you can trust, decision-grade data. And we also have a path for kind of adoption. And Braulio asked this question about, are people replacing, for example, brand equity tracking or brand health tracking? And the answer is that's a great example, right? Like nobody's going to do that on day one. They're not going to change things that they've done for decades. But what we're seeing is if you go from quarterly to annually and then put in brand pulse, like that combination actually saves you 50% on your budget. And everybody's budgets right now are under pressure. Like, what could you do if you actually freed up 50% of that budget and got monthly actionable data? And then, yes, you got your traditional brand health tracking, which has some value to it and is a bit of a post-mortem, a little less actionable. You can do both and still save 50%. And that's what we're seeing around adoption is people have a process. They test a couple different markets, maybe some big markets that are key, some smaller markets to test that volume of the data to make sure they can see the insights. Maybe a difficult market like Japanese because they think it's difficult, where we have natural language processing in Japanese. And so we've got a whole kind of roadmap as to how to do that. And we'd be happy to chat with you about the right ways to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know that there's another question that just came in, so I'm going to go ahead and forward this question on over to the i-Genie team, just so that they can follow up. And just as a reminder, I did drop the link to Trevor's LinkedIn in that chat. So make sure that you connect there, keep this conversation going. But Trevor, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to our attendees. We'll see you over in the next session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.